All right, we're all here. We'll go ahead and bring to order the January 3rd meeting of the Healthy Neighborhoods Initiative Advisory Committee to order. Yeah, so
Let's
guess.
do
Yes, we can do that. we have a new member.
Yes, good evening, everyone. My name is Deanna Schmidt, and I am the staff contact person for this committee. And tonight, I just want to welcome Gerard Buckner. And we are very lucky to have him joining us as a new committee member this evening. He comes with extensive experience working with nonprofits in the community, and we welcome you.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here. Yes, like Deanna said, I come with about 15 years now of experience with nonprofits, from Bureau Court to, wow, I can't even think of all the places I've worked. And currently working in the Discovery Building down on campus, where we collaborate with community centers all around the city of Madison and the state to provide nonprofit work around STEM education. So.
Awesome. Well, welcome. All right. Okay, so we'll go ahead and move on to approval of minutes. We have several meeting minutes to approve. We'll go ahead and entertain a motion to approve the first set of meeting minutes, which was from the September 6th meeting.
So moved.
Seconded.
All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right. And it's approved. All right. And then approval of the minutes for the November 1st meeting.
I'll make the motion.
And I'll second.
All right. And in favor? Aye.
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 And good. We're good to go. Okay.
Can I ask a question about attendance, or is this?
Sure.
So I see that Alder J. Allen is also part of this committee, but I haven't seen him in a long time. Like, is there a reason for that, or like, what? Does anybody know what's going on with that? Or is that not something we should discuss right now? Okay.
I can't speak to the specifics of when Alder Allen is, but I did have him arriving at 5:55 p.m. at our November meeting. So he did come, but a little bit later.
All right. Yeah. Cool. We don't have anybody for public appearances for non-agenda items. I don't see anyone anyway. So we'll go right ahead to review the agenda. So tonight's meeting, we're going to review updates to the Healthy Neighborhoods Grant Program, both the process itself and I believe we have a draft of the application. So we're going to go through all of that. And that is the only item on our agenda, so I guess we will dive right into it.
Well, thank you all this evening. Staff has put together a few slides to provide some background of the grant program and some suggested topics that you all might look at. But of course, we're here to get your feedback and thoughts about the program in general and about the application materials that are coming up. So staff's just put together some suggestions and a little bit of background, and just stop me if this isn't making any sense. Okay. I just have a couple slides about some of the program background. The H&I grant program officially began in 2017. Since that time, nearly $1 million has been awarded to local nonprofits. So it's a pretty impressive program for Fitchburg. There was, I just wanted to point out too that in some years, if there's some issues with one of the awardees, some of those funds can get carried over. So 2022 and 23, we had some carryover funds that bumped us up a little bit in terms of the total funds available to award. This year, in 2024, we have 128,000 available, and that is thanks to the mayor. She has allocated some extra funding specifically for the H&I program this year. So this kind of gives you an idea of the amount budgeted per year, the amount requested per year, the number of requests, and then the amount that's awarded. Any questions about that? Okay. Oops, I think, did I miss something here? Oh, I did, and I don't know why. I must have had it hidden. Sorry. I don't know why. I did just want to show, this gives us, for recent years, 2021, 22, and 23, just a brief look at some of the different entities that received awards. So you can kind of see Boys and Girls Club, Big Brothers Big Sisters, Badger Prairie Needs Network has been consistent too in terms of awarding. Just kind of give you some idea of who has received awards in the past. The next one, staff has put together just some areas that we all have some questions about. So a timing of the schedule, your thoughts about outreach, a review of the program focus areas, the area that staff believes really needs some consideration is the evaluation criteria, and then partial funding for individual grants. And I can go over that a little bit too. But once again, if there's other topic areas and thoughts that you all would like to explore, this is your committee. But tentative grant schedule. So this is very much in keeping with past years in terms of how the grant schedule, the grant process works, at least early on here. So right now, today, you all are reviewing the grant application materials. Staff will turn this around very quickly and have the revised grant applications public. Our goal is by January 9th, so we have a really quick window here. And then applications would be due on February 9th. Applicants are, this is different from past years. Staff is suggesting that all of the applicants would do a brief presentation of their proposed project on March 6th. So you can kind of see in the past we've had anywhere from 15 to 8 applicants. I don't know if we would have significantly more. So staff would be thinking that on March 6th, each of the applicants would do a very brief presentation of their proposal. Okay. And then we would be looking for the committee to do their own individual scoring based on our scoring sheet that we're working on revising. Staff would gather that information and then refer to council, and then on April 3rd, the committee would do review and then approve the final grantees with the amount and who gets the grant. So we have a really tight turnaround, just so that you all know, the funds within the city's fiscal timeline, these funds that are awarded under the H&I grant program need to be used and spent by the end of that calendar year. So they do need to be used and spent by December 31st of 2024. So that's why we have a very tight timeline here. We're trying to push the funds out as quickly as we possibly can. So what that means then on April 3rd, you all, the committee, would review and approve the grants, and then on April 9th, council would do their approval, and then staff would make the announcement of the awardees. Okay, that's a whole lot.
Yeah, I'm very happy that I think I'm happy with the suggestion that the council kind of take a more active role in doing their own sort of scoring and evaluating of the applications, and having an opportunity to have the applicants come and talk to us about the programs that they're looking to utilize the funds for. And yeah, I agree. It's a tight turnaround. The earlier we can get the stuff done, the earlier the organizations and groups can utilize those funds. So
Correct.
Question?
Sure.
The presentation, so is one evening sufficient if 15 show up? I mean, is there a set time? Or, I mean, I'm just thinking of how long this will... It's going to be like a council meeting to midnight, or, you know?
No, staff would not welcome that opportunity to have a 12 o'clock meeting, but I would expect, I mean, so the applications will be due on February 9th, as staff has proposed, and so that will give us time to collate, make sure the application materials are all in line, and then you all will have the application materials with you for the March 6th meeting. You'll have those application materials. And then what I would foresee is that we would request that the applicants provide a very brief overview, like 10 minutes, to say, this is what we're doing, this is how it aligns with the healthy neighborhoods. I would encourage you that this one, you certainly could ask questions, but I think we would need to keep it pretty tight and for everyone. So my suggestion would be about a 10-minute presentation overview, with the assumption that the committee does have the application materials before you too.
Sure. For such a meeting, if we get, let's say, 15, if we give them 10 minutes, that's 150 minutes plus administrative time forward and back. I don't know that leaves any real time for any questions or clarification. I wonder, and this is obviously going to be determined by how many applicants we get that have complete applications and whatnot. And this is going to depend on the committee members and their availability, but I wonder if we could move that particular meeting up to maybe 5 p.m. to allow an extra half an hour.
I mean, certainly that's more than flexible with staff. We can look at a second date. I mean, I guess staff has some flexibility. You all will have to tell me, is it reasonable to do another date? We certainly can move up the time. That is within the committee's realm of.
Sure. And we had discussed last year when we talked about the schedule for this year as far as the number of meetings. I think we have 6.
You have 8.
So we can do up to 8, but we have 6 specifically set. Yes.
Yes, we do.
Okay. So we have two available floating meetings, so we could utilize one of those if we have a lot of applicants and maybe not a lot of time. That might make some sense, but of course that's going to depend on how many applicants we have. If we have 8 applicants, I think one night probably would be.
Okay. Yes, we certainly can look at that.
Question, Ryan?
Yeah.
Sorry.
Sure.
Did I cut you off, Anna?
Nope.
Okay. So under the new procedure, is staff won't be making any recommendations at all? Is this all up to the committee to decide?
I think that would kind of be up to you. I mean, staff can certainly do a scoring process also. But ultimately, I think the decision should rest with, as long as we have a solid scoring methodology in our scoring sheet, I think ultimately the decision should rest with the committee as a whole.
I just wanted to clarify.
Yeah.
Okay, so you're proposing that the committee do the scoring and make the recommendations, correct?
I am. I
Okay,
am.
got it. All right. I just wasn't sure if there were two groups that were doing scoring. Okay, and then okay, I think that's the only question. Oh, and the comment I had was if we did move the meeting up earlier, I'm kind of I'll be traveling during that time. I'll be dropping off my daughter at her gymnastics stuff, so I'll be arriving late. I just want to let folks know that I would have some complications with moving it up earlier.
I have a question. Would it make sense to consider asking only certain applicants to come and present, as in right now, during this committee meeting right now? Does anyone want to think about maybe some criteria that we could have for deciding which applicants we'd be, not seeing any applicants right now, not seeing any applications right now, but thinking about like, what are some situations where we would be interested in hearing more from the applicants?
Are you saying like the applicants we would, I guess, move to the next stage that we would be more into, or?
No, not necessarily. It could be that, I mean, I have no idea, but possibly there are some applications that we might consider, okay, you know what, we have plenty of information right here. We have plenty of information on the application to either approve or deny or, whatever, modify the request already. But then maybe there's a different application where we're like, well, we're not quite sure. Maybe we could get more information. Maybe we want them to present, come in, answer some questions. One additional question that I have, and this could lead into that discussion, was last year there was a question about whether we could maybe change the application to ask something about, what could you do with less funds, or like how would that impact your ability to implement the program? And so my thought would be, and I'm just kind of throwing this thought out there. But, maybe we might identify some programs that we're thinking, well, maybe we want to give them 75% of what they're asking. We want to see, are they able to provide the same services with 75% of the funding? I don't know. I'm just throwing that thought out there. That's not necessarily the criteria that we should use for deciding if we request that an applicant comes in to present or answer questions. So potentially those are two separate thoughts.
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
Question. I think just to follow up on that, and since I haven't been through the process, if an applicant requests a certain dollar amount and we listen and we I just don't know the scoring mechanism. Are they awarded the dollar amount that they're requesting? I mean, suppose you have, there's hypothetical 50 organizations that want money. I mean, there's only a certain dollar amount to the pot. I mean, how does that play out?
I can maybe take that
sure.
one. I can
Yeah.
give a little bit of background. So, in past years, we have, well, I guess you can kind of see here. In 2021, there was 13 applicants. We only awarded 7. I can speak specifically to last year. We had 9 applicants. We awarded 7. In order to make those 7 awards, we needed to reduce down from what they requested. I can't remember off the top of my head, but I think 3 or 4 had requested $15,000, which is the maximum for this grant program, and we reduced them from that amount in order to spread the funds farther. That is actually one of the topics that staff wanted to bring to the committee, because I'll speak for myself here. I have some discomfort saying, kind of picking an arbitrary number, we're going to reduce your funding till 10 to 10,000, though you requested 15. Is that a reasonable thing to do? Should we just award however many grants we can with the funds that we have available to the maximum requested for each one? Or does it make better sense to try to spread the funds as widely across our applicants? I don't have an answer to that. It was something that was uncomfortable at a staff level last year. Yes, so that was one of my topics for you all.
And I think that sort of feeds into Ari's question regarding, we don't know from the applicants some additional info of, can we still utilize lesser funds to, facilitate whatever program we're attempting to run. Because if you award them $7,000 instead of $12,000, maybe they can't put the event on at all, and then that award isn't used anyway, and it ends up getting rolled over into the next year when it could have been utilized. So having people come in, having organizations come in and speak to that, I think would be very helpful. I know last year during that discussion when we were talking about the recommendations from staff, we did ask the question, can we, as the committee, vote to change the numbers that staff recommended? And I believe the answer was yes, but again, without that additional information, it was also sort of uncomfortable for us to make that decision because we didn't have any additional information. So that's kind of, I think, what is now leading us to wanting to speak to the applicants directly or have them speak to us. So that way we can get a little bit more idea of the scope of their program and whether it's flexible or if it's very, very set.
Well, I agree with what you're saying, but at the same time, if I were an organization coming in, I don't know how far I would go to say, oh, I'm applying for 15, but we can give up 5. I mean,
Sure.
At least if I were an organization, I wouldn't give if somebody's going to, give me money to fund. I would be hesitant to say, sure, I can give it up. Yeah, I don't know. So
Yeah,
that doesn't help
I see
any,
your point. Yeah.
I would definitely agree, and just experience with working in nonprofit and with nonprofits, you want to ideally get what you requested, just because that, I mean, even if it's something that they could probably do without, it's always probably that kind of nervousness, like, will it be enough? Or they could have used those funds that they probably didn't necessarily need in some other way, shape, or form for that event, whatever they may be using it for. So I mean, I think a community center or whoever that would apply for it would be like really like teeter-totter, like how they answer the question, to not make it seem like, oh yeah, we could easily, like you said, give away that $5K when really it could be really helpful in some way, shape, or form. I think I do like asking the question to see if people would answer it on the sheet, because maybe there would be organizations that say like, oh well, yeah, I mean, we possibly could do without a few grand here or something like that. But yeah, speaking in front of a person, I feel we just be really nervous because you don't want to come off as like, oh yeah, go ahead, cut it, we're good,
Yeah, I think it might I think the wording of the question probably would be very important to talk to them about, if you're looking to put on 6 events throughout the year and you're looking for 12,000, if you had 10,000, would you do, 4 events instead of 6 or something? So you can still provide, a full service, but maybe at a reduced interval or, something like that. But I take your point that I certainly, if I'm asking for money, I'm not going to voluntarily say, sure, don't give me as much as I'm asking for. Would be very uncomfortable. Ari, yes.
From my experience last year, some of the questions that were going through my head when I was trying to, understand whether we should award, how to allocate, was a lot of, where is this money going directly? So there really wasn't enough, in my opinion, information in the application, some of these applications, to really understand, is the money going to, I'm just going to use an example. Like, is the money going to Uber, or is the money going to, a local resident who's, actually performing transportation services? Sometimes the applications were really vague, and it would have been really important for me to understand maybe the benefit to the community, and just a lot more detailed information about like where some of the money was going to be spent, where it was going. And so to me, the question isn't to the organization, oh, can you do this with less money? In my opinion, we're the ones who are making the decision. We just need more information to make the decision. So my question would be like, what's the benefit to this to our city? What's the benefit of this program to our city? And then we make those. Unfortunately, we're the ones sitting here with the power. We make the decision. But the question isn't, can you do the same thing with less money? The question is, what is the service you're providing to the city? What benefit does that provide to our citizens? And then based on that, at least for me, based on that information, now I make the decision.
Well, I think we're back to the same point. I mean,
Sure.
To me, it's
but
the benefit is
phrasing
to the community, but now we're back to the dollar amount, and we're asking them, can you do less with that dollar amount? And they wouldn't be before us asking for that dollar amount if they could take less. I mean, I would hope as an organization they have a certain process, an accounting process, that they know what they need to make that program work. And that's why those dollar amounts are being requested.
Yeah, and I think that that's the danger in our ability, should we choose to use it, to adjust those numbers, right? Because that's what they're asking for, and we can gather as much information as possible and try to make an as educated a choice as possible. But ultimately, my biggest concern is we award less money than what they're asking for, and then ultimately none of that money gets used, or the program that's going to be put on is not fully successful because of that.
True, but I think we need to look at, if there's 20 applicants, we're going to have to look at it. What is the biggest impact that those organizations will have within the community? I mean, there's always a limited amount of dollars. We can't just spread them out amongst everyone. What benefit do we as a community get from that particular organization? I guess it's a priority set on top of each of those organizations.
Sure.
I mean, it's a hard ask, or it's difficult for us to say, well, we'd like to award everyone. We just don't have those dollars, so we have to draw the line somewhere. Unfortunately.
Yeah. Caitlin?
Caitlin?
Yeah, I just wanted to ask if since this happened last year and there were groups that were awarded less money than what they requested, do we know the impact that had? Did we get any feedback around whether or not that ended up significantly impacting what they were able to do, or just curious if there's past experience that might be helpful.
I can't speak to the impacts from last year. Their final reporting materials are due at the end of the month. I did not receive, no one turned down the funds, even though they received less than their ask.
I can speak a little bit to the Leopold parent family parent faculty organization, because they're in my neighborhood, and they requested 15,000. They got 8,000 something, and a lot of that was for like snacks, for after school programs, for during school day, for events. And they are really, really struggling to find funding for that kind of stuff. So like, I can tell you that they weren't able to find other funding for it, just for example.
But there's also some type of metrics as well, is there, to see if they're meeting their goals as far as the dollar amount being awarded at the end of the year. Can you speak to that?
Yes, so how it's been done in the past and how things are right now is staff has been doing a mid-year check-in. I'm suggesting that that in this go around that the committee would have a mid-year check-in with the grantees. At that point, what we have been doing is asking, how are things going? Are you on track with what the metrics you had in place? Are there any issues? Do you need to make any adjustments with anything? So that mid-year check-in is generally done in August or about there. And then, as I mentioned, all of the reporting materials are due at the end of the month then. This month.
Another question. Have you ever had a grantee, I guess if that's the correct term, not meet their goals, their objectives, and you have not paid out to them? Maybe one that carried over, I'm not sure.
There are a limited number of cases, 2, maybe 3 in past years, that simply were not able to do the funding to complete their project.
Okay.
So
it does happen.
it does
it's
happen.
seldom,
Yeah. Yep.
I'm sorry for the pause. I was trying to figure out how to form the question. The drop off to just about half from 2019, is that due to COVID, or do we know anything about it? Obviously, there was a jump in 2021, but do we know what that fall off might have been? Do we ever hear from folks that weren't awarded? Do they usually reapply? What is any idea around that?
I'm sorry, I came at the beginning of 2022, so I can't speak to the specifics of 2019. It is my understanding that COVID did have impacts on the grant program, but I can't speak to the specifics of that.
I don't know.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
I can comment a little bit. I guess I don't know if it's. I don't know if it. So I was on the committee back then. I was actually on the committee since the start, since 2017. But I know when 2019 to 2020, I know we extended. I know we did offer extensions for people to be able to get, or for organizations to be able to complete their projects. I don't know exactly how 2020 impacted the amount of applicants. But I do know that we did offer accommodations for organizations if they during that time.
Yeah, the only reason I asked is just thinking about if like whether if it's an adjustment or non-adjustment for how much people receive in their grant, that like are people, still willing to do the process, knowing that is a major function for people who don't receive grants, that they won't do it again if they feel like it is a waste of time, or that they feel that they won't be honored what they would request.
I can comment a little bit on that again too. Just throughout the time since we've had the H&I, back then it was called the H&I. Since we've had this funding, we've always made. I feel like we've always made adjustments to during the years to the amounts that that applicants received, and I think the feedback was. That we got was that it did cause some issues, because I know that we had this discussion in the past about we're affecting the ability, we're affecting their ability to come to do the program that they wanted to do, and we're creating we're just causing so that they weren't able to do it to the way that they wanted, to the extent that they wanted. And so I know that was an issue that we discussed, and I think there were a few organizations that I can't remember what the process was in the beginning, but I do remember some organizations saying that it was a lot of work for the amount of money that they received. So I'm sorry, I don't have the specifics, but I do remember having these conversations in the past.
Yeah, no, that's a plenty of information. Then one of my follow-up questions with that is like, this is probably a different time but for this question, but just wondering, like, if we start to think about then letting organizations know that maybe there will be a maximum of how many people would be receiving grants, like in the future, maybe that might help. I mean, there's always probably going to be a teeter-totter of how many people apply and don't apply, but maybe that's just something to think about. So folks just know what to expect.
I think there also we probably need to have a bit more discussion too on questions around organizations that perennially get grant funding versus new organizations or groups that come looking for funding, and the equitability of that versus the process. Because I mean, on one hand, if an organization has gotten funds regularly for multiple years and has shown that they can consistently, provide that service to the community, that could certainly be seen as a good thing, right? They're very stable. They're able to utilize those funds in a responsible manner. On the other hand, there could be the perception that they're just going to get the money because they've always gotten the money. And you've got groups that want to fill a need in the community who are sort of left out because they aren't that group that always gets the money. And so I think we have to strike a balance when it comes to looking at the applications and scoring them and trying to determine funding based on that, and making sure that we're not frustrating groups that come looking for funding and maybe aren't able to get all of the funding or aren't able to get any funding in one round, and maybe trying to take that into account the next year if they apply again to say, did you apply in a previous year? Were you awarded funding, and how do we score that relative to other organizations that come in? Because I know I can't imagine how frustrating it would be to request funds multiple years in a row and either get nothing or get less than I was asking for, while another group may be getting everything they're asking for year after year, and it starts to seem like it's favoritism. Yeah.
What do we do for outreach? I mean, as far as the applications, I mean, what is the method to that process?
In the past, staff has just sent out notices, emails. We publish everything up on the website, and then we just send out emails to whoever we are aware of in the community that might have some interest and ask for it to be shared. We'll use the city's social media to publicize it. That is one of the topics that I wanted to bring to the committee too. What makes sense for doing that kind of outreach. So right now, staff sends out emails to everyone we know of in the community. It goes on to our social media, goes on to our website. So that's what we do right now.
Perhaps that becomes some homework for the committee members in terms of, most of us represent certain areas of the city, so trying to do our own outreach to some of the organizations that we're aware of to make sure that they're aware of the application process and the availability of funds and things. I know last year I had mentioned taking some committee-related field trips to some organizations in the community. That has not yet happened, but it's a new year, so I think that might be helpful to go take a look at some various groups and organizations. One more thought I had on just along the topic of talking about which organizations may have gotten funds regularly. I wonder if it might, and I realize this complicates things as far as the application process is concerned, but reserving a slot for a new organization that has not gotten funds before, to say at least one group every year gets full funding of their grant, and they have the criteria is that they have not gotten funds before. That gives us an opportunity to have different groups every year get funding. Of course, that assumes that there's an organization that comes and applies for funding that hasn't gotten it before, because I'm sure that in the past we've gotten only applicants who have gotten funds.
I can speak for a little bit on that. So this year, River Food Pantry was new to us. New Bridge was new to us in 2023. I believe in 2022, Dear Diary at Charles Hamilton Houston Institute, we referred to them as Dear Diary. That was a new one to us. It's not real unusual to have some new ones.
Okay. Mm-hmm. I mean, maybe that's not needed if we as a committee are just kind of all looking at the applicants and having that discussion to make sure that we are keeping that in mind as we go forward. But just a thought as years continue to move into the future, to think about making sure that we keep an eye on that, I think would be helpful.
That's a fair point. I'm glad you brought that up, because I thought about that. I'm not sure who's all applied in the past, but I haven't noticed like Meadowwood Community Center or that library. If I'm reading this correctly, I'm blind, y'all, so you gotta correct me if I'm wrong. But I'm thinking about even Southdale. That's not Park Street area, right? Or
Southdale area is going to be south of the Beltline, off of Rimrock, so the Rimrock area.
oh, gotcha. Okay, so by
Just
that
east of 14,
Yeah.
Park Street, yeah.
So, in that neighborhood is like the Roots program that does food. I'm not sure if those folks have applied or
Not
what's
that
over
I'm
there.
aware of.
I think we
Where
did,
Southdale is new to Fitchburg, so this is the first year that Southdale will be submitting grant proposals for this grant.
Well, actually, it's last year, 2023
Yeah.
was the first year for Southdale.
yeah, there were specific funds
Oh,
last year
okay.
that were
Yes,
allocated.
there was specifically 15,000. So River Food Pantry, Big Brothers Big, no, yes. Boys and Girls Club, both are doing some work in Southdale. So there wasn't an organization unique to just Southdale. There's $15,000 of funding that went to providing services in Southdale with a couple of these organizations.
I think, if I remember correctly, was Root one of the groups that came to speak with us this last fall about the work that they're doing in the community? That there was or was that River Food Pantry?
River Food Pantry
Okay.
came.
I'm sorry.
Yep.
But yeah, that's another thing that we, I think, we kind of had talked about later last year, was making sure that in the fall time frame, we have some time as a committee to talk with organizations about what they're doing in the community, not specifically in relation to the grant program, but just in general. And that can kind of open us up to finding out about organizations we might not know about as a committee, which can be helpful in knowing what's out there. Especially, I mean, the Southdale neighborhood being new to Fitchburg this last year, was good to figure out what's over there for those who aren't active over there regularly.
Caitlin?
Yeah, so I have to apologize because I'm like still really kind of at the basics level for understanding the grant, but that was really helpful clarification. That was going to be my question. So these different grants that were awarded to different organizations, they're not each attributed to a specific neighborhood. They're just saying that they do serve these neighborhoods.
Yes, exactly. So how Boys and Girls Club, their metrics are providing a certain number of meals or food services to a particular neighborhood. Actually, Big Brothers Big Sisters, their goal is to have a certain number of littles in Southdale. So their organization's applications break out what their metrics are to serve each individual neighborhood.
And so is there accountability in terms of that 15,000 going specifically to specific Fitchburg neighborhoods?
Yep. Well, the 15, I'll step back. The 15,000 was unique to 2023. That was a special funding allocation specifically to Southdale. And then in staff's recommendation and in the awards that were actually ultimately approved, those was a number of dollars that went specifically to Southdale. Yes. This year is a little bit different. This year, our funding does not come from council with a specific dollar amount allocated to each priority neighborhood. That would be something for you all to consider also.
This might be a question, I guess, for the application itself discussion, but is there a section on the application that asks which neighborhoods that they are providing services to?
I'll have to go back and just confirm that we have that in
Okay.
there.
Yeah, I think that would definitely be important if we're not requiring certain expenditures to certain neighborhoods to at least have that information handy, so as we're scoring them, we can each individually take a look at that and see, again, equitably how we can make sure that all the neighborhoods are getting services provided to them, because I really would feel awful if the council awarded funds to a bunch of organizations and it turns out one neighborhood gets left out.
We will definitely confirm that.
Cool.
So if I'm understanding correctly, you're mentioning that even if a application is weak, but it's the only one from Southdale, we would still give that we'll potentially give that application a.
That's a good question. I mean, I think that's up to us to discuss and score. But I think it would, in my mind, for me personally, it would have to be a particularly weak application for me not to want to make sure that some of that money is going specifically to a neighborhood. But that's just me and how I would score it. I would want to make sure that the money is shared as equitably as possible.
No, I agree. I think every time it should be an event that's in each one of those neighborhoods to provide that opportunity. And just thinking about like, if there is only one from that one particular area, but it is really weak, what can we do to, make sure that those funds get allocated correctly and that obviously we get a report back and all that stuff. So
yeah, and I think part of the staff's recommendation that the council have a mid-year check-in is a really good one, because that provides us an opportunity to get direct feedback at that moment, to talk with the groups about how their programs are going and what, if any, issues they may be having. Particularly if there are infrastructure issues that other staff or the city can help facilitate further. Let's say, for example, they want to put on a soccer camp at a park, but that park, the soccer fields aren't being mowed regularly because of just somehow, that's how the departments are scheduling when they're doing their mowing. That would be a pretty easy thing that we could do during the mid-year check-in to say, okay, we need to interface then with that department to make sure that they're making sure that the facilities are in good shape and running for those for those programs to take off. And it'll give us some additional opportunity to get some insight at just on an annual basis to then inform this same discussion that we're having now next year, when we're looking at the application, seeing what our changes and what the differences are this year from, say, last year. Because last year, the committee took staff's recommendations, we asked some questions and things, and the process from a committee member standpoint was much more hands-off. So this year, I think there's going to be a more active discussion amongst us to try to determine what the priorities are of the grant program.
And I think about like bigger picture, maybe down the line, if this were to continue to grow, if there would be any opportunity for like some mentorship for folks that may, like you kind of mentioned earlier, those folks that we don't know, or maybe folks that are looking to start an LLC and not really understanding this whole process, or think that they're not big enough to receive funding. Is there some mentorship we could help them be able to move forward in their programming and do that?
Yeah, absolutely. That would be something I think that could be included in maybe a future budget to add to the committee's purview per se, to say, in addition to a grant program, there's some sort of an incubator program or mentoring program to talk with them about, or to, provide them information about these sorts of programs to get up and running. Yeah. Cool. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Is there any other discussion about just kind of the general process, or do we want to move to looking at the application itself, the draft application, and some of the changes? I think that would be the next thing to talk about.
So what is actually included in your packet? Think about what's the easiest way to do this. Let's see. Not that one. Sorry, I wasn't totally prepared. Okay. So actually, in your packet, what staff included was where we thought there was the most major changes that needed to happen. And this is because this is kind of the bread and butter. This is the application scoring sheet or criteria sheet. And this one, in a lot of ways, will help kind of shape any edits that we'll need to do to the application materials. But so this is where staff has put in some preliminary changes in terms of how the applicants are scored. You can kind of see here that, nope. I apologize. Let's try that one more time. There you go. How about that, guys? Do I gotcha? Okay. So what we included was some revisions to the application review or scoring sheet. In my opinion, this place needed the most help and the most reviews, so that's what this is looking at. We're happy to take a look at specific things with the application, the other application materials. We just felt that this was one area that we definitely needed to have some larger discussions. So this is how it stands right now with some changes. One of the things that staff was discussing was small-scale capital projects. That is not something that I have found that has been funded in the past. What I've only seen in terms of past funding is some sort of services. So there was just a question here for you all. Does it make sense to continue with having the option to fund some small-scale capital projects?
I know last year we had an application from Bike Fitchburg for some wayfinding signs for some of the bike paths and bike infrastructure.
We did.
It was, in my opinion, it was a very compelling application, but I think the ultimate decision of the committee when we were looking at it, and I think it followed staff's sort of recommendation, was that the grant program may not be the best avenue to fund such a thing, given that it is a capital item. That said, I'm thinking once again with bicycles, because that's kind of my thing. Let's say an organization wanted to put up a bike repair stand at a nonprofit with a pump or something like that, particularly in a neighborhood that doesn't have access to that already. And they wanted $2,000 to do so, or $1,000 to do so. That's a small-scale capital project that could have some pretty big ramifications to a neighborhood's transportation capabilities. So personally, I think I don't know that I'd feel comfortable with totally striking out that as an option
Okay.
myself. Even though, again, we could, such funding could come from other places. That's true. But I don't, it seems an awfully heavy lift to ask for a budget item from the council or something of that nature for something that's maybe only a few $1,000s. On the flip side, asking for $15,000 to fund something for a community center that is a permanent fixture, in my mind, is something that's more in the purview of the council itself as a budgetary item rather than a grant item.
Okay. Any other feedback about that?
I would agree with Ryan on that. I'd like to leave that in as well.
Okay. We will do so. This is where they indicate which neighborhood they're serving. We certainly could add a line item here to say how much funds would be directed to each one, and make sure that that's very clear, how much the funding is directed there.
Yeah, I certainly would like some more granularity there, because I could check all those boxes and provide one event to one neighborhood and 5 events to the rest of the neighborhoods, and technically I would be fulfilling the check marks. But if the committee knew that I was only planning one for this neighborhood, then they might have made a different decision. So.
Yep. I think that that's not a problem. Staff will ensure that the application materials are very clear. And as I noted before, that 15,000 was kind of a special thing for 2023, directed specifically towards Southdale. That's how council awarded the funds in 2023. That's not how the funds are coming to you all for 2024. These are the major areas of funding areas in the past. Any comments or questions about that? These areas tie into the Healthy Neighborhoods Initiative Strategic Plan. That's where those items are coming from.
I do have a question about those. I know that rent or housing has come up in a lot of our conversations, and I don't know if that would be included in neighborhood community building, but just curious if that's not the way that, just curious if that needs its own bullet point.
I guess we would have to explore exactly what that means for rent or housing. If we're talking about a maximum of 15,000, I'm not clear in my mind what those funds would be used for in the realm of rent and housing. Do you have some thoughts, Caitlin?
I mean, I did when I spoke with the social worker, the JFF social worker in Southdale. She mentioned some programs that are, nonprofits that are directly sort of involved in housing support, rent support, eviction prevention. So again, I don't know if that's relevant for this grant, but
Yeah, I guess I could comment a little bit. There were some programs in other neighborhoods not in Fitchburg. None of them are in Fitchburg, where there is organizations that are using, and I don't know if this would fit under the grant criteria, but they're using, they have funds from other places, and they're using those funds to supplement a tenant's rent while you have a number of community service providers that are working with that family on an ongoing basis. So something maybe to that extent, Caitlin, is that, I don't know if that's what the JFF worker talked to you about, but I know that's happening in other JFF neighborhood areas.
Exactly. Yeah. I think that in this case, it was the road home part room. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Sorry. I've had some conversations with some other groups also that have provided resources for refugee resettlement, for example, and providing some funding or using some funding to access housing for them in the neighborhoods might be another usage that an organization might apply for funds for. Say, they need a security deposit to be able to get somebody into housing as they're being resettled into the neighborhood. I don't know if, I think that's kind of similar to maybe subsidizing rent while services are provided to families as well. But I mean, it seems to me like that would fall underneath the H&I strategic plan, talking about resiliency or rather stability of households.
Because this is a little bit new area, as far as I can, from my standpoint, from what I can see, I would just like to run that through the administration and our city attorney, just to be clear that something like supplementing rents is something that is appropriate for these dollars. So if you'll, excuse me, give me the opportunity to check a little bit more into that.
Yes, absolutely.
Which I shall. Then we just are showing here some general application, evaluation, completeness, thoroughness, the detail. This is where, under the specific evaluation criteria, staff has just tried to offer some clarification, I guess, how well the proposal addresses the issues identified, sustainable outcomes, effective, meaningful outcome measurement and evaluation, aligns with the H&I strategic plan, promotes self-sufficiency of individuals or organizations, coordination, collaboration with other relevant partners. So staff is just proposing some edits here to help us evaluate the application. Open for suggestions.
I have a question about the outcome measurement and evaluation item. Is that internal measurement and evaluation for the organization, or is that evaluation and measurement that is committee and public facing?
Good question. The way that staff had envisioned this was that with the applications, they need to provide effective and meaningful measurement of what they're doing, right? Does it make sense that they're spending those dollars in a way, and they have a way to measure how those dollars? So this would be specific to this particular application and the project before you.
Okay, excellent. Yeah, that's meaningful data that we definitely could use. Yes.
I apologize, but I have to head out. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you, staff, for all of the work you've put into this. So I understand there's a whole bunch of stuff here too, and staff is hoping that we can pull together any edits and get everything put out to public early next week. And so happy to take any comments, questions, send me an email if you have a little more time to digest some of this. We have a couple other considerations here: organizational capability, successful completing of grant projects, demonstrated community support for the project, and that might be, we have an option right now. There's an option to provide letters of support in conjunction with their grant application. So that's where you might see that level of community support through those. We don't, at this point, require letters of support, but that is certainly one option for an applicant to bring forward. So then we're just offering a spot for the evaluator, which would be the committee, to offer any general weaknesses, strengths, thoughts, and then a final score and a funding recommendation, and then identify a funding amount. And what the idea here is that we would request the committee to fill out for each one of the applications. Staff will kind of go through and collate and pull it all together. And then at the later meeting, at your next meeting, staff will collate and bring it all together, and then you can bring it together for discussion at that time and make your final thoughts and considerations.
Okay.
So that's kind of where we're at. I'm happy to take any specific comments and questions. I would just ask, because we are on such a tight timeline to get these funds out to our organizations, we are hoping early next week to have the revisions completed.
I have one question
Sure.
under specific project evaluation.
Yep.
What is the meaning of promote self-sufficiency of individuals and or organizations?
So that one's an older one here, and I think the thinking here is that, like the Latino Workforce Academy, the idea of their work is to give people the tools and abilities in order to be workers and workforce of the future. So I think the idea is that that the outcome of this funding is going to make stronger individuals and organizations. Does that kind of make sense? Mm-hmm. I'm happy to, if you find it problematic, I'm happy to make edits.
Oh, no. I was just thinking about it. That makes sense for an organization like that. I was thinking more like, let's say, the Parks Alive program, where students just like kind of go and have a good time and, eat pizza, get some books and stuff like that. Like, how do we really, I guess, follow up with that? But,
yeah, I see what you're saying. How do we really measure that? Mm-hmm. This is a struggle of what we're doing here. Yeah, there's some level of...
Yeah, I think some groups are going to, or some applicants may score better in one area because that's their specific focus versus another that may score better in another area, or maybe a more even thing because their services or their program is maybe a more general sort of thing rather than being very targeted.
Right. Maybe the term self-sufficiency is hanging us up there. Would we say resilience, growth? Is there a better term here in thinking about Parks Live that certainly does strengthen the community, but maybe it's not specifically self-sufficiency.
Yeah, maybe promotes community engagement and stability of individuals and organizations. Because Parks Alive, certainly one of the goals is to engage the community, have people come together, enjoy our parks, and have access to resources, but also have access to each other.
Yeah.
To share space together and to play.
I understand what you're going at. Let's see if staff can kind of rethink that. Maybe the term self-sufficiency isn't quite capturing.
Are there any poets on staff? We could.
If I could comment, I like the way you phrased it, Ryan. Promotes stability and, I'm sorry. I can't remember how exactly you phrased it, but something with regards to stability and promoting community engagement.
Yeah.
Okay. We can certainly make that change.
Yeah. Well, the only other comment that I have in looking at this is just under the organizational capability criteria section, number 2. I think that's the section where some additional information from the applicant about whether they received funds in previous years, and I don't know if that's an appropriate place to ask them how successful their programs were. I mean, the history of successfully completing grant projects kind of is very open, so that could mean any grants that they applied for. They could just kind of tout their success at, being awarded grants from anywhere. But I think I also would like to know personally whether or not they've received grants and how successful they were from this program as a refinement of that question.
Okay. So maybe that's something that staff can kind of pull together.
Sure. I mean, the applicant themselves maybe doesn't necessarily need to provide that information. If we already have that information. We can look back. I guess it's just making sure that the committee members have easy access to that information rather than us having to dig.
Okay.
Which we very much appreciate from staff doing that work to dig it all up for us.
Okay.
Is that a question on the application of how successful were you at completing grants? Or is that?
This is an evaluation. No, I don't think on the application there's a specific question that asks for the history of grant projects. This is more in a staff level evaluation.
Okay, cool. I was just wondering because for new applicants, I know that would be probably really scary. Just like you don't have a chance.
And I guess that would be my only concern with it being an item on the scoring list at all is that, well, if you're a larger or more established organization, you might get a 4 on that with no sweat at all because you've just been around for long enough that you've been able just to have that track record, right? But if you're just getting started, you're already at a disadvantage because you're going to score a 1 or 0, or I guess 1 is the lowest you can score. So automatically, because maybe this is your first try.
Right. And honestly, if you are not comfortable with having that as an item on the scoring sheet, it can be removed.
I don't know. I mean, on one hand, we are the ones doing the scoring, right? So we can evaluate and look at the application and say, well, this is a new organization. How heavily are we going to weigh that question? I might say, well, you don't have any history of it, but I'm still going to give you a 3 based on the work it looks like you've done in order to bring other people to the table and community members.
How about instead of history, maybe it's not so much history, but a measure of likelihood of successfully completing the grant project? Could you rank it
Sure.
based on the application materials about they seemed well positioned to complete this project based on their resources at hand, their understanding of the community needs? Would it be more of a question of the likely ability to successfully complete the grant projects instead of history? I'm just throwing that out. I think that's what staff is trying to get at,
Right, yeah.
which applications, we are stewards of the public funds, right? And so what staff was trying to get at here, is this proposal likely or successfully, is there a really high chance that this is going to be successfully completed with public funds?
Yeah, I mean, I think that certainly changes as I'm reading it, that changes for me the perception of the question, right? So the question as it's written seems more of a data-driven question, saying, can you provide me specific metrics on your success or on your performance? Whereas the likelihood of success is very subjective. I mean, that's something that's just up to me
true.
to take a look at and say, how do I feel about this? Which is, it could be totally fine, but I just am, I guess, noting the differences in the question in my mind, where if I'm looking at something from a data and numbers perspective, scoring that is pretty simple because it only requires you to just kind of look at the data, and it's pretty easy to determine whether or not something's been successful or not based on those numbers. Whereas saying, well, is it likely to succeed? Well, if I know the person who's in charge of the organization and I trust them and they've done other things in the community, I might be more likely to say, yeah, I think that's going to succeed. Mm-hmm. But if I don't know them,
yeah, I think you have a good point. I guess where I was kind of going with this was thinking about, some projects are going to just be successful because an organization has done their homework. They know what the issues are. They've prepared their project. They have the tools available to complete, right?
sure.
So I guess that's kind of how I was more. I'm kind of going on the fly here, but I'm trying to think. There are things that you need in order to do a successful project, right? You need to have a good understanding of your context, the lay of the land. You need to have the right people in place. You need to have the right resources in place. You need to have the right tools in place to make sure that project is successful. And I think that there are some things like that can be shown in the application, I would hope, that would help make a project more successful, I guess.
Yeah, and I think, I mean, some of the other entries in this are sort of tied to that, right? The likelihood of success of your program is probably going to go up if you have a match amount from another source. If you have demonstrated community support. Because all of those things are going to help fill in any of those weaknesses or, lack of experience or any of those other things, because they have that as their additional support. So that has me cycling back towards the, history of successfully completing grant, because it's like, well,
that's
the
fine.
likelihood could be easily, or in my mind, could be easily determined by some of these other questions. If they're going to score high in the other three areas, then the likelihood is kind of yes, it's a likelihood of success in my mind.
Good point.
Not to be indecisive about it or anything.
No, these are hard things.
Yeah.
There's not.
As y'all both speak on it, it makes me think then, are we wondering about the history, or are we wondering about, have they demonstrated, I guess, a proper outline of what the potential success of the upcoming event is going to be? Which one are we worried about? History,
Right.
To me, history just doesn't. I would be interested in what the staff thinks about it, because the history to me just doesn't seem to make sense. Because even like, let's say there's a group that may reapply that has a new director, new vision, something like that, but we say, well, their history wasn't as good before, so that kind of gives me unease. But so like you said, that then gives us a reason to say like, oh well, I don't know if we could believe that, even though they have a brand new vision towards it. So based off their current outline of what the event is going to be, do we want to think about that more and think that, oh, this looks like it'll be a success? So I don't know. It's just an interesting question to me. And I don't want to spend all night on it. But
What do investors say? Past performance is not indicative of future success, I think is the phrase.
I
So
have heard
it's
that.
true, right?
I think you're the poet.
Yeah, I mean, maybe a scoring option of I guess, how comprehensive the plan is. I mean, that seems kind of a vague.
Yeah, and
Thing
I
to
mean,
score,
we don't
but-
have to have. We could just take that off.
Just get rid of it and
Yeah.
just not replace it with something else, I
Yes.
guess. That would just reduce the number of overall points.
Yeah. Well, you still have a scoring system.
Yes.
Yes.
And we're already up points from the last application. I see
Mm-hmm.
we went from, what, 36, 38, 36 to 48, so.
Yeah. Okay. Well, it might be just
I do,
easier.
can I just jump?
Oh,
yeah.
yes.
Yeah.
Well, I was gonna make it less easy, but I just wanna put it out there that I think that when we talked about, Dan, I think it was you talking about being well positioned for success. I found a lot of usefulness in that question, reframing from focusing on history to whether or not, and even some of the specifics that you mentioned. I think that has a use in this in the criteria. I think redirecting away from history to me seems like a good thing, even though being well positioned for success might include a history of successful grant applications, but it's not, dependent on a history. So I'll just put that out there that I liked your original framing around having done their homework, knowing the lay of the land, tools in place, staff in place. I thought that was really useful. But I can just let it go from there, and if you want to take it, with the staff, that's fine too.
Well, let's think of it this way, because I had said, well, if they score highly in some of these other sections in some of these other questions in this section, the success is likely. But what happens if they score low? They don't have any matches. They don't have any community support that they've demonstrated, but they have other things in the application that may indicate that the program will be a success. I think that question would be useful in that case, because they may still be able to provide that service or successfully complete the program without some of those other questions. So I think you're right, Caitlin, that question has value, even though in some situations it may be somewhat redundant with some of the other questions. In the cases that it's not, it may be useful to provide a boost in the number of points to some organizations that maybe have other things in their application that can point to success being more likely.
Well, how about this? Why don't, why, I think staff can take a second look at this and to maybe shift away from specifically history, but we could certainly include history and maybe I'm kind of going back to tools, people, having those right kinds of things in place, and maybe if we can hone in on that, that will leave history, but kind of allow you enough room to score that for the.
Fair, yes.
Let me see what I can do.
Now that we've done a total
Yeah, these are just
walk around of the question. Yes.
It's very hard, and I think the capability criteria is an important piece because we do have a responsibility with public funds to make sure that we're allocating the funds responsibly, and so I think some of this is kind of a good workaround. So let me see what I can come up with.
Sounds good.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. Well, and is there any other discussion?
Yeah, not on my end.
Okay.
Here.
I think we've hashed that out enough. So
Okay.
okay.
All right. So the only thing I will just say, get me any comments, questions, thoughts as soon as you can. Staff will take another walk through the evaluation criteria, the application materials by the end of the week. I'll send them out for your review one more time. And once again, we're hoping to early next week get everything published and up into the real world. So tight turnaround, and I thank you for your help.
Okay. All right. If there's no other questions or comments or discussion, I think we can close out that agenda item. All right. Next section is report from departments. So other than this discussion, anything else from staff?
Yeah. Just want to give a couple of updates. The first one is we have council has approved the contract with EQT by design for phase 2 of the Teen Center feasibility study. So later this month, we'll be getting going full steam ahead on the Teen Center feasibility study. We'll do regular updates and make sure all of you are aware whenever we have any public meetings scheduled. The hub is in final construction document now, though, so our engineers and architects are preparing the final construction documents, so pretty exciting. Council did approve to proceed with including the footings for the covered structure in the construction documents, and hopefully we can late spring, early summer go out for bid for the construction of the hub. So things are moving along, I think, quite nicely on the hub. The other thing that I wanted to update you all on is staff has finalized the job description and for the community services or community development specialist. And so that'll be a new position in the planning department, which will be your representative, your staff member for the H&I committee. And this position, community development specialist, will have their focus solely on healthy neighborhoods and the community piece of everything that we do. So I'll be around, but you'll have a specialist to work with you all. The timeline on that is the job description is done. The HR team here at the city is reviewing everything, and hopefully, if all goes well, the personnel committee will approve that job position. And if things continue to go well, we should have that new person on staff in April. So, really excited about this opportunity to have a person dedicated to the H&I programs. So, that's all I have.
Yeah, that's excellent. I think both of the hub and the West Teen Center programs are things that lots of people are very excited about seeing continue to move forward. So that's very good to hear. And I personally am really excited to hear the new community development specialist coming on in. Not to say the rest of the staff isn't plenty special on their own. It's pretty awesome. So great. Awesome. Okay. All right. So announcements. I just have two quick things to mention. The first is that the mayor earlier today sent out some requests for committee members to have a quick meeting with her about the different committees and kind of the priorities for the year. So on February 15th, I will be meeting with the mayor to just kind of have a quick discussion about that. And so I will, that next meeting is March 6th, I think is the
Our
date.
next meeting for H&I,
Yes.
it will be March 6th.
Okay. So, yeah, I'll just, I'll update the committee on what we talked about, I guess, as a function of that. So just so that way everyone is aware that's happening. And then the other announcement just is something that's sort of tangentially, well, tangentially or directly connected to the healthy neighborhoods, I guess, idea, is that there are currently public comment and information meetings going on this week. The first one was actually last night regarding the new police services building and the funding of that. So I strongly suggest folks look those up. I think there's another one tomorrow night and then maybe Saturday. So that's your opportunity to learn more about it, ask some questions, maybe give some feedback, and then provide maybe, write or talk to your alderperson and the council as a whole and the mayor about how you feel about that and what you'd like to see done as far as that's concerned, because that services building and the funding to build it are going to affect the entire city. And that's it.
The PowerPoint, will you be able to send that out to all of us?
Yes.
Please?
Yeah, that would be super helpful.
Thank you.
Okay. Well, yeah, are there any other announcements of any sort? Nope. Okay. Well, then I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
I'll move to.
Okay.
I'll
Who wants to
second
take
it. I'll second.
Okay.
All right. In favor? Aye.
Aye.
All right. Meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everyone. This was really, really great.
Thank you.